Hello, everyone, and welcome to this town hall for the SMC Sangha and extended community. SMC continues to be touched by your outpouring of kindness and concern, and we're grateful for your presence today. Thank you for being here. Today, we are Zooming live from Rigdon Hall at Shambhala Mountain Center, the Rigdon Shrine Room, I should say, where SMC's Executive Director, Michael Gayner, and other leadership staff from the land will be here to answer your questions and provide an update on SMC's current status. But first, a quick technical note about today's Zoom. I'm Kitty Kaler, the Online Programs Manager for SMC, and I'm here with two of my SMC colleagues, Bruno and Tony. Tony, our Hybrid Programs Lead, is manning the camera, and Bruno, Programs Lead, and I are here to provide you with tech support. If you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to us in the chat box and we'll be happy to help. You can open the chat window by clicking the little icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. It looks like a little conversation bubble. On a mobile device, this is typically found in the 3 dots more button on the bottom right. The chat window is also how you can ask any questions that come up for you today. Please chat your questions directly to me, Kitty, or Bruno. Thank you to those who set questions in advance. Michael and our leadership team members are going to do their best to address as many of those as possible, as well as questions that come through the chat today. While we may not be able to address all of the questions, please know that anything submitted will be used to inform our future updates, and we welcome continued communications from you all. Thank you again for coming today. And without further ado, Tony, could you please send us over to the Executive Director, Michael Gayner?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I think, first of all, I just want to express my profound gratitude for all of the support we continue to experience from our Sangha, our larger SMC community. One of the things we'll be doing tonight is meeting with a number of the SMC leadership who are working directly with people on the land, and it'll give you a sense of how your money is being used, that incredible generosity that allowed us to survive the fire and return to the land and engage in cleaning up and all of the various projects that we're working on these days. So I think without further ado, I will start inviting people up. And the first is Noel Smith, who I believe many of you will know. Noel Smith.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see everyone. And so previously my role here was the Director of Culture, Community, Practice, and Education. And so I'm still doing those things, but I've also been taking on a lot of the operational things that are going on around here, including a lot of the cleanup and a lot of really trying to assess the tent platforms and the campsites and just all sorts of things. So my role continues to evolve and grow and change. And who knows, maybe my title will get even longer and more clunky as time goes on. So, but mainly I just wanted to start off by kind of sharing what it's been like to get the community here. And, we're at about 15 people, which is, kind of, there's still a few people who will be coming back shortly. And there's a few people who are away on vacations or other things. But the truth of the matter is that right now, it's very rustic, and in a lot of ways, there's only a few water sources on the land. There's only a few places where people can shower and things like that. We have transformed Shotoku, which was previously the children's center and also a seasonal dorm, into sort of a community center. So one of the 2 rooms we've made into a dining hall, and the other room we've made into a staff shrine room. So we're continuing to have practice, we're having community meals, and we're really trying to foster a real sense of community with the folks who are here. So it's been actually quite nice to settle into a much slower pace and a much smaller group of people, and the amount of work is massive. So we really are trying to all chip in. We're trying to all work together, and we're really trying to just communicate with the land in a way where we can figure out what does the land need and what do we need as a community in order to not only help the land thrive, but help each other thrive. So it's going to be an interesting winter. It's going to be much smaller. I think, I was chatting with Greg Smith, and we're pretty sure it's the smallest staff we've had since 1979, which is the same year I was born. So it should be pretty interesting to see how that unfolds. So yes, we have the Shitoku. We're using that as our kind of community space. Like I said, sharing group meals. And we did a blue moon, full moon, Halloween Sadhana of Mahamudra feast as kind of one of our first practice activities. That was really a big communal thing. Everybody who lives here, including a few significant others and things like that, all attended. So that was great. It was really nice to really bring everyone together in a practice context, in a communal and feast atmosphere. And we've also been doing one community sit a day, kind of leading up to the dinner. So we have the kind of practice thread happening. We're really looking forward to being able to do some lost songs and things like that. We've done a few smaller indoor things, but because of the statewide fire ban and the fact that, we just had this massive fire, I think most of us aren't too gung-ho to have a big fire and offer smoke. We don't want to spook the local firefighters, and we also just want to respect the fact that
there's a fire ban.
There's a fire ban. So there's that. And then, yeah, we've been cruising around, going through the campgrounds. A lot of the campgrounds have been severely decimated by the fire. People who are familiar with the land will know that there's the campground Padma, Padma West, Padma East. In that entire campground, there's only 17 tent platforms that survived the fire. And, so we're having to go around and collect all the 10 tent poles that were normally stored underneath the platforms, which are now kind of charred hunks of twisted metal and melted little bits and pieces. And we've been using a fairly large magnet with wheels to try to pick up all of the screws and nails that were in the platforms. Each platform contains about half of a bucket of nails. So it's quite the operation. And we're looking into other ways to do that more rapidly, since the hand pushed little magnet thing only goes so far. And yeah, but ultimately we're trying to take care of the spaces that still are here, some of which have been slightly conquered by rodents and other critters that live here, especially when there's not people here, for as long as there weren't. And we're trying to really communicate with the land and clean up the land in a responsible way to limit our impact on the burned areas, but also to remove all of the leftover bits and pieces from tents and everything else. So hopefully that wasn't too fast of a little update, but I just wanted to kind of share, what's going on with the community a little bit, what's going on with practice a little bit, and what's going on with the land and how we're trying to really steward a re-arising from the ashes.
Thank you, Noel. Are there any questions that came up for Noel or comments?
Nothing so far.
Okay. We all approve of what he's done with his hair and his beard, so I thought maybe that might be a comment about that, but
thanks, Michael.
You're welcome. All right, and there'll be questions. If you have questions specifically for Noel, please just send them in through one of the means that we have to send them in, and people will have a chance to come back up. So next up, thank you, Noel.
Thank you.
Is our very own Marcia Simpson.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome, Marcia.
Hello, friends out there. It's a really funny thing. The first thing that I'll share is just kind of reflecting on how many fire updates I watched online. And then just the similarity that we had here of like prepping to do kind of the same thing. So everything comes full circle in the end. But I guess I thought I would start with the evacuation, which is one of the many beginnings of this year.
Maybe you could just start with what your job is.
My title is the Senior Director of Operations. Yep, currently. So anyways, back to the evacuation. It feels worth noting what that experience was like, because it was actually quite challenging. And I think that we're still sort of feeling what that experience was like as we're back here together. And for me, there was still some work to do, but it also felt kind of like a forced vacation of sorts. And I found myself trying a few times to like formulate how to make it feel like a vacation and do something really exciting, but in the end that never happened. And I really think that it's because what I really wanted to do was just go back to SMC. And so it was just kind of a daily waiting for that. And then as far as returning to the land and what that was like, I made a few trips before the evacuation ended. And then that experience was kind of the same as even when we were able to fully move back to the land. And I actually found it to feel extremely energizing in a kind of excited and even positive way. The only time that I really felt the sense of like devastation was that day when we knew the fire had made it to SMC. And I think that a lot of that was just because we had so little information. And so, you can kind of just think of the worst. But so being able to come back here was, I think in a lot of ways, just a relief. And there was a lot of joy, despite the devastation. There was, you can actually take in the view for yourself with your own faculties. And so there's kind of that more vast experience, and then down to kind of the minute details of, okay, I'm going to go into this building. It's been vacant for a month and a half, and I have no idea what I'm going to find. So it was good energy. And I think ultimately where that energy was coming from was just this ultimate feeling of like, SMC is still here. And I can feel it. And, as we all are, just extreme gratitude for that reality. And then since then, the energy kind of ebbs and flows, I think sometimes along with the weather patterns and just other factors up here. And we're still figuring it out. I think Noel touched on a lot of kind of the bigger details, but it is just kind of a day by day figuring out what needs to happen today, are everyone's needs being met? What tree needs to come down today just because it's too dangerous? So, lots of challenges and still lots of just beautiful SMC moments. And actually that experience that Noel mentioned with the thousands of nails and the little magnet, like it actually provided a lot of laughter for a few of us. And so we need that right now. And so we're really grateful for all those moments. And then as far as things that I'm working on right now, I am also a part of the team that's just doing the overall overhaul of getting spaces kind of just back up to where they should be, making sure that everything is taken care of and being looked out for inside and out. And then another big piece for me is looking at the 2021 year and the program calendar and what does that look like. And there's still a lot that we don't know, but it's interesting to be a part of that team, to look at a year with still so many unknowns, but at least some sense of what's happened before that we can kind of start with. And I think the last thing I wanted to do is just acknowledge the residency participants that have also been a part of this community that were also impacted by the fire, just like the staff were. I think we had about a dozen residency participants that were impacted in some way, whether it was just the kind of intense experience of the smoke in the beginning or, all the way up to that final mandatory evacuation, and then others now who are still waiting to come back to SMC. Yeah, so I just wanted to really acknowledge and thank all of those people who were a part of this experience with us and, you know, hung in there in any way that they could and still wanted to stay connected. And I know the community, the staff community has really appreciated knowing that. And for those who can or would like to or can still return, we're hoping to do that in January of 2021. We think we'll be ready by then. And then along that same note, another thing I'm working on is kind of looking at what does the residency program version 2.0, call it, look like, and working with our residency program lead coordinator to get out more information and get that back up and running as soon as we can. So if you are interested or if you know anyone who might be, please keep an eye out for those emails to come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Reed or Tony, have any questions come in for Marcia?
There's one for Noel, but Marcia could probably answer it. Did you say that the Podma campground was decimated, and what other campgrounds were affected?
You want me to go or do you want to go?
You can say it if you want.
You know better than I do.
Okay.
And you have some of the numbers.
Yeah.
It does, okay.
Okay.
We'll
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. And if you have questions for Marcia, there's still time to, send them, and we'll bring Marcia back up.
So all of the campgrounds were affected. Red Feather Campground was the least affected. We only lost one tent platform there. So out of the 20 that were there, there is 19 remaining. The Vajra and Ratna campgrounds were severely affected, and we lost anywhere from 58 to 60 platforms in each, which is the vast majority. There's actually only 4 platforms left in both of those campsites. The Vajra bathhouse also burned down. So basically the entire hillside where those campgrounds were at is really where the fire did quite a big run. And so those campgrounds are basically no longer there. Padma West, which is the side closer to Shikoku and closer to where Pushpa used to be, which is also burned down, is completely gone. And then there's 17 platforms closer to Sacred Studies Hall and the gift store that survived. So yeah, the campgrounds were severely affected, and the main shrine tent platform also burned down. So really, most of our tent infrastructure is no longer with us. So it'll be interesting to see how we rebuild that, and it'll be interesting to see, what choices we make with the Vajra bathhouse being completely gone and that campsite being essentially gone. It does give us some options about how do we want to do things moving forward. And I feel that in the past, a lot of decisions that were made were kind of always under the pressure of, how do we do things? And we do have a moment here where we can kind of rethink what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I know other people are going to speak to that as well. But so the campgrounds were severely affected. And, as someone who's participated in at least a half a dozen setups and at that many takedowns as well, it personally affected me quite a bit to see when I was riding the 4-wheeler around, making an inventory of the different platforms that were still there and just seeing how many were gone. And it's a really, this will be the last thing I say and then I'll jump off, but it's really funny to see, a little concrete foot and one little charred leg, and then all the poles that used to be underneath the platform, everything's still kind of there. You can see where it was at, but they're just gone. And it's, similar to some of the older cabins where they're just a pile of ashes and some little legs sticking up. It's like that, but for every tent platform, which is about 170, give or take. It's 168, I think, is what the final number is. But that's how many platforms we lost. So quite a big loss. Yeah.
Any other questions come up?
Yeah, any smoke damage in or on the stupa?
we're going very slowly. We're going very slowly with the analysis of the stupa. It's been locked. And there's various processes in place. So I don't have a proper answer to that question yet. From the initial analysis, some smoke did get in. I think I've mentioned in the past that when the very first return of people after the fire, we had an art restoration specialist that we'd flown in and an appraiser from the company that was working for the insurance company on appraisals. And they opened the door, and the first thing he did is just kind of wipe on the ground. And there was some dust, some ash dust. So that needs very careful work and attention. And we need to know how much, what kind of funding is available from the insurance. And we don't have those figures yet. So in the meanwhile, we're just buttoning everything up and making sure that nothing gets worse. And then we'll address it properly as we have the clear understanding of how much money we have and what needs to happen. Any other questions?
There is, but I think it's a good question from Mac.
Okay, so why don't you come up now?
Okay.
So now we have Reed.
Oh.
Hello, my name's Reed Miller. I am the somewhat new Rusung of SMC. Let me pull up my notes real quick. Noel and when I'm up here now, most of what I've been doing is working with Noel and Marcia on a lot of the same things that they've already been talking about. So I think I'll just kind of go over my entry into this job and go from there. I got here about a week before the fires hit and before we got evacuated. And then pretty much immediately was evacuated with Michael living in a house in Fort Collins. And we were just kind of going at full speed. I was the executive assistant for a few years with Michael before I came back to become the Rusung, and basically I just turned into that role again to really help with the like pretty awesome amount of stuff that we were trying to get done. The transition to becoming the Rusung actually happened. The ceremony was taking place pretty much exactly as the fire hit SMC. And so we had all of our staff gathered. We were just outside of the Fort Collins Center. And as we were, as Seton, the former Rusung, was taking his decommissioning oath and I was taking my oath, there was ash coming down from the sky on us. And, we were all aware that SMC was likely burning, and it was quite a moment. Marcia saying like that was the most devastating moment of this whole thing. It certainly was, but there was something really poignant about the fact that we were all together for it, and doing something as powerful as a Rusung ceremony. It was quite a moment. And since then, again, I'll echo what Marcia said of coming back to the land. SMC is still here. It's, it's a little bit charred, but the core of it felt here, and I think everybody felt this really palpable relief upon coming back up. But, you take a whole community of people who have elected to live in the mountains in, somewhat rustic conditions under, normally, and then put them in a hotel by the highway with almost no feng shui or, natural drala presence. Very few people were happy with that. And it's taken a long time for our community to kind of settle into what, into coming back to the land and feeling like we're here and dealing with the ramifications of being evacuated for an entire month. Now my days are kind of mostly filled with just random things, filling in where I can, whether that's, trying to get a raccoon out of our CFO's office, or, just picking up nails, as Noel was saying earlier. It's still been pretty busy. We're still working, or at least I am going pretty hard at trying to figure out how to get things going again. And we're kind of shaping up for a very different winter with just 12 staff. We're really looking at all of the different opportunities we have for how we can really come together as a community and look at things like, gender inequality, racial injustice, and how we can invite more of a diverse community up here. And out of the biggest thing of just this morning, we all met and just discussed what we really think community means and how we can develop that as a community, so that when we open up again and invite a whole bunch of new staff and volunteers back to the land, hopefully in May, that we can have a culture that's already built for them to move into and to take part in that, and something they can that can guide them into what it means to be working at SMC. And so, yeah, with that, I think that's most of what I had to share. Let me check to see if there's any questions real quick. I think, yep, that there's one question in that we'll let Mac answer, and he's up next. So,
okay, thank you, Reed.
Yep.
And just to say, Reed also shares responsibility with a few other folks of chasing down people who decide they want to come onto the land despite our "we're closed" signs. There are some interesting moments of saying.
There's been quite a few of them of, it's like, oh, I didn't think those 5 signs in the chains that we put across the entries don't apply to me.
Yeah.
So
it is still, there are still some hazards from the fire, and basically all of the land is very fragile right now, particularly the parts that were burned. And then there are just liability issues around the insurance process that still needs to happen. So we can't open to the general public.
Yeah.
So we're having to continue to ask people why they came on the land.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Reed.
Yep.
And now we're going on Zoom to Mac, who lives in Fort Collins. And there's Mac. Hey, Mac.
Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes?
Oh, he's muted.
No, we can hear you.
No, okay. So yes, so thanks everybody. I am considered on-land leadership, but I live in Fort Collins. And so I'm home in quarantine actually, because my wife is sick with COVID in the room next door. So we're here taking care of her and trying to stay healthy and safe while I'm still working to help SMC. I wanted to start my little section of this meeting with, since I have a public forum, I would like to publicly celebrate the leadership and care and compassion that Michael has brought to this entire effort from the start of the COVID crisis earlier this year all the way through the fires. It has been tremendously reassuring to me to know that Michael was there and was always there for each of us, and he's always there for all of you. And I just wanted to really kind of celebrate that. I also want to kind of celebrate the people that are there on the land. As someone that's in Fort Collins, I'm always so impressed and delighted to hear of the great progress that people are making, kind of reclaiming what we need to do to reopen and to be of service to the world. in my world, I want to particularly make mention of John Roop, who runs our water department. He has been kind of heroic because it's a very large, complicated system, and it's been very much damaged and challenged by the fire. And so he has been working very hard with consultation with Dickie and our partners. And so I want to just publicly thank Roop. I don't think he's on the call, but and then everybody else is there. So I won't go into the list, but there you go. That's my opening shots. What I want to talk about is, I think while the fire was devastating in so many ways, it provides SMC a tremendous opportunity. So in 2017, I was hired, and my title is Senior Director of Master Planning and Project Management, and I have oversight over the Built and Natural Environment departments. And so in 2017, we made a commitment as SMC to develop a master plan that would usher us into our next 50 years. And a lot of the materials and ideas and frameworks and constructs that we have developed over the course of those 3 years, I think have really seated us well for recovering from this fire, helping the land recover, helping our community recover, helping our business operations recover. A lot of what is in the master plan is rooted in the idea that we're trying to kind of take a very regenerative approach. We're trying to create health and resilience and capacity. I think what the fire illustrated is that some of the environmental work that we've done has done that across the land. The conservation forestry project that we completed in 2018 helped SMC and the firefighters kind of successfully contain the fire on our land. So we've created, in other words, we created a kind of a circumstance for fire resiliency, but also health and capacity. We signed a contract for phase 2 of our forestry project about 24 hours before the fire went through SMC. And so we'll be doing additional conservation forestry work in 2021. So I guess if we're going to just kind of talk practically about the things that I'm working on, over the course of the master plan, I'll tell you a little bit about some of the master planning pieces that we've done. We crossed a big hurdle just last night, at this time last night. Larimer County, the Larimer County Planning Commission voted to send our amended land use plan to the Larimer County Commissioners for a final vote next month. And so that allows for us to begin to plan in earnest for future development, particularly in the areas of staff housing. So that was about a year's worth of work, and I'm so happy that it went well last night. The other things that I think we've been working on, that I know we've been working on, that are going to be helpful as we recover, is that we have, over the last 3 years, developed a very large network of extraordinary partners, and each of those partners have contributed to elements of our master plan and continue to contribute as partners as we develop the plan and further kind of hit the ground running with this recovery effort. So we have created building standards, green building standards that set a very high kind of regenerative, ecological, efficient green building standard that we'll use for any future construction. And we have partnerships from universities to private companies to the green building team at the National Renewable Energy Lab. And so we have a wide network there. We also have a significant amount of partners in the development of our land stewardship plans, including National Resource Conservation Service, Fort Collins Conservation District, American Forest Foundation, Colorado State University, University of Colorado, USFS, U.S. Forest Service, and others that are helping us craft a regenerative, science-based kind of plan that recognizes that what we need to do is embrace that we are a part of this incredible living system, and make decisions based on the uniqueness of the SMC area and in partnership with the community all around us. We also have done extensive work in energy planning, and so our goal is to create a net positive energy plan for SMC, meaning that we will eventually generate all of the energy that we use on site, and we will generate more. And so we'll be of service to the world, and we will do things that will not just correct the or kind of meet a stasis, but we will kind of try to do better things. So I always say that we're going to stop doing things better and do better things. And so our energy planning process has developed some interesting results and some interesting plans. So very practically, you know, if we're to look at what my day-to-day looks like, I work very hard on with the team on eco recovery. Again, we have a large network of folks, a big coalition of folks helping us to understand what recovery for SMC's land might look like in the context of the complexity of the challenges. I work working very closely with Michael on creating the circumstances for staff housing. So there are a lot of pieces of the planning that have happened, and we're exploring different kinds of structures in different locations, and exploring financing and looking at all of our options. Again, that would be consistent with our green building standards. I'm going to be working, or am working, I guess, with Noel and Marcia on 10 platforms, trying to figure out a cost-effective and efficient and sustainable way to build those 10 platforms. Working to support Roop, John Roop and Dickie and their crew in the water department, trying to get water back. Danny Boyce has been a hero over this recovery period too. I'll call him out by name. He's been working very hard on water as well as electric issues. So we still have electric service that's out that's impacting our ability to recover our water system. And so he's been working with our electric provider to kind of manage that. Let's see. I think that's it for now, unless there are questions or additional things that we should cover. One question did come in, and it says, is there still a hold on any more buildings from the state or county? I heard this was due to having to finish the water project. What is the status now? So I'm not entirely sure what that question means. We are in full compliance with the state of Colorado in terms of our wastewater collection system. And so we met all of the requirements associated with that project in November of 2018 when we finished our collection system. So not all the buildings are connected to it, and perhaps that's what the question was to do with. But so if I haven't answered, please maybe send a message to Kitty, and I can address that more specifically. Are there other questions that have come in for me?
I was told you did answer my question. Thanks.
Okay, good, thank you, good. I've got one right for once. Is that it?
I think that's it for now.
Okay, thanks for letting me speak, everyone, and thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mac. I'm going to put the spotlight back on the shrine room.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we do have one more question of who is on the land, who are the staff, do we have their permission to be named, where are people living, and what's up with the kitchen, and why are people dining in Shitoku? As far as the staff, we don't have their permission. We would have to go and ask. But I can't answer the other parts to that. Most of our staff right now are living in our Stupaview area, which is basically, if you know where the upper parking lot is coming onto the land, it's those tan kind of prefabricated buildings right next to that parking lot. We have a few people in some other houses, but again, I mean, what we lost was mostly our legacy housing. So those old kind of funky structures that were all over the place. So there's a couple people that are kind of outliers to that, but the vast majority of our staff are in that Stupaview little village. With the kitchen, we can't use a commercial kitchen when we don't have water sources to it. It's against code. So we're using Shitoku because it's a private kitchen and it's big enough just to feed the 10 or 12 of us that come to dinner every night. And we're just cooking one meal a day for all of our staff. Otherwise, everybody's kind of on their own for food. And I don't believe we have any other questions, so I'll kind of hand it off to you.
Okay. Thank you, Reed. So there are a few questions that came in advance, so I'm going to just run through them. There's a question, I'm not familiar with all of the smaller buildings destroyed during the fire. How many are considered high priority for SMC to operate fully? Help me guys if I miss anything, but one of the Maitri buildings, that's a very high priority to operate fully. I think beyond that, the Stupa support building, that's a very high priority. And then, to understand what high priority means, given the number of staff housing spaces that we lost, which we lost 9 in the fire, and in the preceding half dozen years or so, there were probably about another 5 houses that finally gave up the ghost after 50 years of funky living. Wonderful spaces, but they aren't functional anymore. So in order to reopen, it's a really high priority that we build staff housing. Otherwise, for example, we'd have the staff living in the lodge, and then, our lodging is a key part of our business model. So I'd put that up as a very high priority as well. I think those are most of the, and then the main shrine tent platform, which is about $100,000 to fully replace that with the wiring and everything. So those would be the main things. Beyond that, we lost Pushpa, which was a significant building in many ways, used as the staff shrine room and as a practice place for programs during the summer sometimes as well. And one of the things, so we're working now, Mac and others are working on a staff village that would be yurt based through Colorado Yurt Company. You can go to their website and see the yurts that they create. They're fabulous. And we're thinking we put in 13 houses, 13 homes there, and then one larger staff space, a larger yurt that would be used for the staff. And fortunately, we received a very significant donation that covers about half of the cost of that. Well, a quarter of the cost, and then there'll be a challenge match grant that we'll talk about in greater depth in later communication as we activate that. So that's enormously helpful. And we had a donor who provided the cost for the main shrine tent platform as well. So those were huge. Those allowed us to take the step forward and place the down payments and such. So yeah, incomparably big that we had that. So I think I've answered that question. Yeah. There's a question here around kitchen equipment and clothing and bedding. And someone who has a lot of it and would like to give some of that to staff to support the staff. And that's an incredibly generous offer. And right now we're kind of working through the various staff homes. We're receiving money from another trust. We're not quite clear on how much it'll be, but basically we're going to renovate a lot of the staff, the remaining staff homes, to really bring them up to snuff. Put in engineered hardwood floors and do some drywalling and painting and such. So once we've done that, we'll make an assessment of the furniture and bedding and the rest of it that we need, and then we'll put out the call, and that would be gratefully received. There's a question here: what practices are being done to restore our connection with the Dralas? I think, the starting point is that we're approaching the environment from a really, again, science-based approach of how does one recover from a fire? How do you best take care of the land? And so rather than seeking to just get rid of all the burnt trees, for example, the best advice, the scientific advice, is to leave as many of those in place as possible and to go for an aesthetic of health and of proper stewardship and such. So we'll be talking extensively about those principles in coming communications. So for me, relating to the Dralas on the land, a big part of it is demonstrating that you're being responsible and courageous and doing the right thing rather than the pretty thing or the convenient thing. We're practicing. We had a Sadhana Mahamudra feast. Loden Nima, the monastic who lives here, he'll be returning to the land and leading practice sessions and study. We can't do external asanas yet, but we will be returning to our practice of regularly doing those. And then as we move into the spring, I'll be in touch with other folks to see what kind of other specific practices might be helpful from Vajrayana and a Buddhist perspective. And then we have a long tradition of pouring sweats here by someone who is authorized through Jim Tolstrup, who's authorized through the Lakota tradition, and his teacher, Jim Sam Mooskamp. So we'll be doing sweats as well. And there are other aspects, but I think that's the idea, is that, we're doing it piece by piece, responsibly, and plugging into the practice elements. And I think that's the answer at this point, unless anybody has anything else to add. Good. So there's a request from someone who lives at Crystal Lakes to come to practice at the stupa. We're not really open yet. If somebody has a particular need, marking a particular anniversary of a joyful or a heartbreaking event or something such as that, you can be in touch with us, and we do want to try to accommodate those kind of visits. But it's very much on a case-by-case basis. So if there's something in particular, please, feel free to get in touch. But the stupa itself is locked and will remain so until we do the proper art restoration work and that analysis, and that is going to take some time. So even if someone was to come to the land, it literally would be practicing around the stupa, not in the stupa. Might it be possible for Warrior Assembly to be available? That's not a question that SMC decides. We've indicated in previous email that in previous messages that we fully intend to be a home for all Shambhalians as well as so many others. And so if a Warrior Assembly, if we're asked to hold one, we would hold one. Absolutely. An update on the stupa and how to contribute. The easiest thing, the straightforward thing, if you want to make a donation earmarked for the stupa, just go to our donate button on our webpage and indicate that it's for the stupa, that it's restricted, and then it would just go to the stupa. And you can do the same thing with checks. If you send that in, just in the memo line, just write restricted stupa, and it would go to the stupa. There's a question here around SMC's affiliation with the Sakyon. And I feel that's a bigger question that can be answered in this kind of a context. And there are ongoing conversations. I would refer people to our webpage, and there we have a number of communications that we've made out around events in Shambhala, and we hold to the position we took in the summer of 2018. And then, as I said, ongoing discussions. Much of what's going to happen in Shambhala is not of SMC's deciding. I think it's fair to say that in some number of months after we've carried out further analysis and discussion, we'll probably make some further clarifying statements that will be more of a responsive nature. But right now, I don't think I can say much other than this is the Shambhala Land Center, and we fully intend to remain as the Shambhala Land Center. How much damage was there to the campgrounds? I think Noel answered that pretty thoroughly. There are still trees in the campgrounds, not all the trees burnt. And one of the phenomena around ponderosa pine is you can lose a very significant amount of the tree can be burnt and lose the needles, and the tree is still able to survive. So that's one of the reasons we've been very clearly told not to do anything with the trees until next year, other than the hazard trees where they burnt, the inside burnt out, and we need to take those down. Where did I put my wallet? Certainly the cabins and other structures. This is the longish question. And I think the heart of it is around to what extent will there be a kind of a quirky uniqueness to the various buildings that we construct or that we're planning. At this point, yurts really make sense for a number of reasons. They're cool, and they're four-season, they're made locally. They are designed for this climate and wind and snow load. They are eminently affordable. We can, for about $500,000, we can get 13, I think, staff homes of significant size with potable water, wastewater, and power, and all within a designed civic area with landscaping so that we can really create something powerful. And then when we move to a final staff village area in 10 or however many years it'll be, these yurts could actually be moved at the same time. So it's a good investment for us as well. So I don't think we'll be doing projects where individuals will sort of design their own houses here and there on the land. If something like that happens, it would be for a very specific reason and would be a part of the overall aesthetic of SMC. I think that's it. Have any questions come in over the last little bit?
No.
Okay. Maybe we'll just wait and see if there are any questions or comments coming in. Just give it a minute. So financially, the gift that is supporting the staff village and the yurts, that has allowed us to really anchor our situation. And, I'll share more in regard to the matching grant and how we're going to be working with that. To give a sense of the scale of the challenge, the tent platforms alone, to build those on using a metric of what the average cost of building a deck is in Red Feather area, the total cost of replacing all of the tent platforms would be a little bit shy of $750,000. So there's some big things at stake here. in order for us to be able to fully rebuild. So we're, again, waiting for the final insurance numbers to come in, and we just don't know where that's going to be. And that'll dictate a lot of what we're capable of doing, what we know that we will do. And now with this gift and the support of so many other people, letting us get to the place where we can really restrict these donations and have that conversation to those areas of the main shrine tent and the staff village. So thank you again and again. And I just forgot where I was going. What was the last thing I said?
You were just discussing the gift is allowing us to
really anchor in those two projects, and then be able to start doing the work around how are we going to replace all of the tents, and in at what pace, what are the materials we use, that kind of thing. We're also looking at the feasibility of getting rid of the construction zone pack van trailers and being able to construct an administrative area where Pushpa was in the past. So that would be another yurt settlement. And again, with the yurts, if, eventually when we redevelop the downtown and build the staff village, we'll be able to move these yurts into those locations as well. So that's an hour. No further questions? Okay. Well, again, thank you all so much. Your care showing up tonight. I hope you enjoyed seeing these leaders at SMC shine. It's an amazing group of people that I have the privilege of working with, and I'm so grateful for everything they do. Big shout out to Kitty as well, and to Tony and Bruno for their tech support on this. And I look forward to seeing you all back up on the mountain sometime in 2021. So thank you all very much. Good night.